we have with us Dr. Anthony Richards, who, BSc UE, PhD London, is actually the Caribbean's first Obeah biochemist. He's interested in the links between plant uses in West Africa and in the Caribbean. I don't know if you have been watching television in Barbados recently, but you can't turn on your television without seeing Dr. Richards. He's been married. I'm not finished yet, sir. He's been married. I want to establish that connection to other places. He's been married to Ugandan Sanyu Semafumu for 30 years. How you expect to start talking before I tell people that? And they have two very tall offspring. And both of their children play stilt walking Moko Jumbi. And Dr. Richards plays the irrepressible, unstoppable horned jambo. Of course, these are our characters. So after 16 years working in the United Kingdom and being mixed up in science, he came back to his place of birth in 1997, which is Antigua and Barbuda, to serve as chief chemist. Of course, he's also worked in the British Virgin Islands and in Barbados. Personally, I know him to be a beekeeper as well, to be a very senior beekeeper in our association. And he is going to bring us perspective on that connection. He's going to talk to us about migration as it relates to herbs and a little bit of spiritual healing. Welcome, welcome, Dr. Richards.
Howdy, everybody, and thank you, Ayana, for that lovely introduction. Right? Father's Day, a few years ago, my mom, who's now 83, right, was visiting with us. Was it Father's Day? And I asked her to do something for me, and I'm going to show you what that is in a minute. I had just read that there's a tradition in Jamaica, right, where when two parties want to separate from each other, they say, let's cut the kata. A kata is a head pad. It's called wad in Montserrat, and sometimes wad in Barbados. But when you're carrying a heavy load, this is exactly what you need, right? A head pad to cushion the load. Now, here's what happened. I asked my wife, Sanyu, from Uganda, what do you call a kata over there in East Africa? She said in her language, it is called enkata. Well, you could have knocked me over with a feather, right? I didn't realize that that word could have been all the way over in East Africa. And it gradually began to dawn on me that through our migrations across Africa, through trade, men and women carrying bundles of produce, of gold, of ivory, from town to town, right? That the word kata might have spread across vast parts of Africa. And then finally, it ends up in the Caribbean. And then the Jamaicans had the phrase, let's cut the kata. Some historians looked at that phrase and they realized that it might be connected to a practice in the 1700s when the enslaved people were having a bad marriage and they decided to divorce. Right? That they could take a piece of cloth that they'd made into a kata, and they could cut the kata into two equal halves, and each person got the wife got one piece of the kata, and the husband got his piece of the kata, and they went their separate ways. And that was a way of representing that we no longer farm together, we're no longer responsible for each other, let's peacefully separate. So the African kata became repurposed into a symbol for divorce. In some people said, here it is, a circle, right? A symbol of a circle being torn apart. Some people think that it was symbolic that way. And then from 1700s to 1800s to 1900s to today's Jamaica, you might still hear the phrase in some parishes, let's cut the kata. And it appears in some Jamaican novels. But here, I wasn't satisfied with that answer. I wanted to go back to Africa to find out if the practice of cutting the kata, right, may have been in Africa all along and not created in slavery as a substitute for divorce. But I asked around different African countries and nobody knew about it. Eventually, I found some legal cases in Ghana discussing how you split family inheritance, how a person who wants to break away from his family or who is cut off from his family because he's so disgraced, this would happen by the elders gathering and the eldest person cutting the kata, the cloth kata, and separating it and giving one piece to the person who is to go. And that person now is not part of the clan. They don't have to attend funerals of anybody in the clan or the family. It is done before the ancestors, and it is considered a very, very serious thing. It is very seldom done to cut the kata and cut the person off from the spiritual connections to the rest of their family. They have no more claim in the land of their maternal side, right, which is the very important side among the Akans. But it's not only the Akans who do it. Right? The Ga, right, down around Accra also do it, and the Ewe. So that was very interesting to me, that practice was still remembered in the Caribbean. But not only in Jamaica. When among the Maroons in South America, in Suriname, our CARICOM brothers and sisters, if a man were to dream, for example, that he's being harassed by another man, a ghost, right? I'd go to the Obia man, the shaman, the Winti man, and say, why am I dreaming that this man is trying to kill me? And the Winti man might say, you know, that man is the spirit of your wife's ex-husband who died. But you have to perform a ritual of separation. So the wife comes and has a special herbal bath, and they tear cloth to symbolize that separation, you know? And when somebody in Jamaica dies, the widow or widower, usually the widow, can take a handkerchief and cut that handkerchief in half and put one half of that handkerchief into the hands of the deceased in the coffin. She might even put something special in there, like some big hair, to say, goodbye, that's it for you, right? God bless you. Go to the other side and leave me alone now, right? And she keeps the other half. Or she might have gone out to get a shirt, a man's shirt, cut it in half, right? And put one half in the coffin and keep one half. A tradition which is dying out in Jamaica now. Now, I found out some other things about the kata. Kata is a Congo word. There is a word, kata, among the Ghanaians, which means to carry. But kata is a Kikongo word, so it probably came to us from the Bakongo, who were brought from Congo and other people around Angola who have similar words. In my wife's country I mentioned, this is called Nkata. And I went to Uganda and spoke to a woman from the Basoga tribe. And what she told me is, you never throw away your kata rolled up. You unroll it. So here's a plantain leaf. Yeah, you roll this into a kata. But when you finish with it, you unroll it and throw it away. You unroll it and throw it away. The belief the woman told me was that thieves might come along and find that rolled up kata intact. They would bind certain herbs in there. There's one herb called kata binder. There are two herbs that you would bind there with incantations. And this would cause the household, my household, to fall asleep so soundly that the thieves could go into the house, lift me up, tip me out of my bed, and I would not wake up. And do you know what my mother told me? My mother told me that when a child in the Caribbean, in Antigua, is a bad child that doesn't want to go to sleep when you put him down, what do? You make a little kata for his head, and you nestle his head in the kata, and he will sleep soundly. But listen, they also say that when women don't want their husband to run around, when he goes to sleep, they put a kata on his head to make him sleep soundly. Now you have to get rid of that kata before he wakes up, because that's the end of the relationship, right? And every now and then, a man would come out into the road in the village saying he found kata on his pillow. He found kata on his pillow, right? And that's the end of that. They say that if you are out at night and you meet a sukuna, a sukuya, you take off your shirt and you tie it into a kata. You twist it up, tie it quickly into a kata, and sit down on that shirt to control the sukuya. And if a woman is pregnant and labor pains start to come on, in Antigua, in Jamaica, in the British Virgin Islands, it was a practice for her to put a kata on her head and put a flat stone on that kata, and then that flat stone is supposed to hold that pregnancy, bind it until she can get to her mother's place to have that child, maybe her first child. Yes? Now, in Uganda, in my wife's country, the kata, and kata is also the ring at the top of the house, the traditional house. The traditional house had a kata ring, and then you would start to take the other poles and so on down from the kata. And that was the foundation ring. And if you go to the palace of the old Ugandan kings, the great big traditional house has 36 katas, concentric katas in the roof, representing the binding together of the 36 clans. And each of those is a spiritually charged kata up in the roof of the palace. Now, one of the most powerful representations I've heard of the kata is from Southern Africa, where it is called Inkatha. Inkatha. You may have heard of the Inkatha Freedom Party, which bound the Zulu nation together in the fight against apartheid. And this Inkatha is the very same sort of thing. But let me tell you what's behind it. Each Zulu king had a kata to bind his nation together. Shaka Zulu's father, when he started to bring the Zulu nations together, he made a national kata for all the Zulus, binding the kings together. In the time of Shaka himself, Shaka's role as king was to sit on the Nkata when the soldiers were out fighting. And sitting on it, just like we would sit on our kata when you see a sukana, bound the forces together and allowed them to have victory. There's a movie called Zulu that you might have seen, in which the Zulus defeated a British army. And the news of this went home And Shaka Zulu heard of the victory, and he got up. It is said he got up off of the kata. Now, the movie continues and says that the Zulu army came upon a small unit of Welshmen. And this unit of Welshmen in a farmhouse was able to hold out against the mighty Zulu army for days. The Zulus lost some people. And in that movie that was made in Britain, the Zulus raised their spears and shields and saluted those Welshmen and went away. Now, what you don't see in the movie is African history. The Zulu mothers, the Queen Mother and the other mothers back at the palace, criticized Shaka Zulu severely for getting off of that kata before the army got home. He was farming fool. And they said that it is he who is responsible for the losses after the destruction of the British Army. So in the 20th century, to bring together the Zulu nation again, Chief Buthelezi revived the idea of the Inkatha to form the Inkatha Freedom Party. The British, in their wars against the Zulu, were aware of the kata. And after the death of Shaka, they defeated one of the subsequent Zulu kings. But the mission of the attack was to find and destroy the kata. Perhaps they destroyed it when they burnt the palace, but that kata was never found. So, an old piece of cloth, repurposed, right, to a kata, has become our symbol of binding together, our symbol of power, our symbol of separation. And although we arrived here naked, sometimes with not even a chain of beads around our necks, our heads were full of African civilization, African concepts. So when an African teacher, Caribbean teacher, is teaching about a donut-shaped universe, and the children are wondering, what is this donut? We should be saying kata, a kata-shaped geometry. We must learn to turn back to our own philosophical concepts in our education. I think that's all we want to say with you today. Thank you very much.
Wow, wow, wow. Powerful, Dr. Richard. Very powerful. The comments are give thanks, brilliant, wonderfully interesting and entertaining. Sale, sale, kata, 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 a must have, special orders available. Got a problem, buy a kata. And people are signing up to learn to make kata. Steve remembers carrying the firewood and dashing on his head with his kata. And some of us need instructions on how to get to the kata stage. People are ordering katas, good tips. Kata gone clear, love it. Kata will sell out. Brilliant presentation, Dr. Anthony. Listen up, ladies, about that kata trick for those men. Cool, Dr. Richards. And it goes on and on. You're going to put Ayana, the lawyer, out of business. Fascinating. We don't need lawyers anymore. And it goes on and on and on. Thank you, thank you. The Caribbean's very own Obia biochemist. Thank you for telling us about the power, the tradition, the uses of the kata. Thank you.